Today, we're going to dive into After Hello Hotline. We got a few guys that called in with some questions, some things that they wanted specifically a matchmaker to answer, but they're all kind of circling the same issue around work, ambition, connection.
Remember that just because you're a successful professional doesn't mean that on the other side you can't be a successful or a great partner.
Say if your Google Calendar gets more attention than your relationship, there's probably going to be an issue there.
Research shows that usually if you have that amazing relationship as your base, you can go further. You can certainly go further with the support of another human. Imagine what you want your life to look like and realize that's where you have to water that grass. There's a time of life for everything if you make time for it.
And I think I've said this before, I don't think readiness is a feeling. Readiness is a choice. You have to choose. So issues that 90% of what I think our clients are dealing with. So we're going to go ahead and take a listen and see where we can help out. Sound like a plan? All right, so today we're going to dive into After Hello Hotline. We got a few guys that called in with some questions, and they had some things that they wanted specifically a matchmaker to answer, but they're all kind of circling the same issue, I think, around work, ambition, connection. So the same issues that 90% of what I think our clients are dealing with. So we're going to go ahead and take a listen and see where we can help out. Sound like a plan?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
So I work as a lawyer and I travel around visiting clients and at different stations all the time. I'm only 4 years in, so I'm still progressing through the ranks. And basically, I didn't really prioritize dating up until now. I'm at a point now where I'm thinking, I see my friends settling down. I see others in a scenario where they are finding their life partners and everyone seems to be pairing up. And I've kind of always prioritized my career. Part of prioritizing career is when the company says, hey, who's willing to go there or take on this project that involves a lot of traveling, I put first to put my hand up. And that's working for me very well, and I'm doing well in my job. The problem is I'm struggling to balance that with dating because I'm traveling all the time, in hotels a lot of the time, and usually when I'm traveling, I'm working. On the weekends, I'm just catching up on chores and stuff. And so I don't really know how to go about dating. It's really hard to stick around and spend enough time with someone to even progress. And usually I'm out, so I don't get to spend that time with people. And so I'm really feeling like, do I need to cut back on the traveling? And then I'm afraid that's going to affect my career growth. At the same time, I'm touching 30 now. I'm nowhere near finding someone to settle down with. And I want a wife, and I want a house, and I want the picket fence and the kids, certainly. It just doesn't seem compatible with the lifestyle I have right now, what I feel like it takes to be successful in my career. I'd really like to understand more about how should I go about it? Do I take a break for a bit and just really focus on finding somebody and then let that hurt my career and risk resenting or feeling resentment or regret around that? Or do I, kind of just keep winging it like I am right now, but that doesn't seem to be getting me very far in my mission to find someone? So that would be my main question, how do I navigate that with my career?
Okay. Where do we begin? I have so much to say on this topic. I'm sure you do too, Maria.
I think winging it works for vacations. I'm not so sure that's going to work for lifelong connection, but I'm curious, how would you coach somebody like Danielle who really has structured, it sounds like every part of his career is structuring or prioritizing his career, but hasn't prioritized his love life?
Yeah, I would ask him, look around at the life that you're living now, and it's going to reflect your priorities and where you've put your efforts. And you can see you are getting further in your career, but you are missing that person. If you'd like to build a life with someone, like you're saying, your friends are finding their person, it's going to take some space, right? And so that would be my first bit of advice, is get really clear on what you want now. And of course, you're going to have to take some effort, sometimes some energy from what you've been putting into your career, but that's your choice. So the resentment piece could be real, but you need to be really focused on what it is that you want your life to look like, and then decide that you're going to put some, resources that way. Yes, you might meet someone tomorrow in an airplane, but the same will hold true if you don't invest in that relationship. It's not just about finding that person, but keeping them. And so imagine what you want your life to look like and realize that's where you have to water that grass. And yes, there is only a certain amount of water. We know that, but it's a stage of life. This first stage has been all about building a career. You're almost 30, right? So next stage, people understand that is sort of building the time for a family. So that would be kind of my first bit of advice, is get that clarity and then realize what you're going to have to allocate towards it.
I think we should give space to the fact that he is actually only 30. I don't feel like it's not like he's behind in any way, but somehow his tone made it seem like he was concerned about it. So if he went on to focus on his career for another couple years, I mean, do you think that would put him behind the curveball on finding his match?
Yeah, I don't believe that there's any timeline or any one path. So it really is, somebody can get right out of law school and decide, I'm going to build a family. And so they might put more time into that and you grow their career more slowly. Somebody might want to take that fast track, right? So the good thing about life is that you get to choose. And so I would say, what do you want right now? That's what you need to put the effort. So are you behind? No. Is he behind? Absolutely not. He could put as much time as he wants to into his career. We do know that the dating pool gets a little bit smaller, right, with time. So that's just something to consider. But I think your person, you can find them at any age. So that's just one factor to consider.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, maybe to your point, getting intentional about what it is you want. If he's maybe kids, for example, are something that looking to have and thinking about wanting to have them at a younger age versus, maybe later. So then maybe, yes, that would mean you need to start being more intentional right now with finding your person. I mean, I heard him saying that he's traveling a lot. So some of the questions I think I would be asking him is, like obviously wherever home base is, do you foresee that staying home base? Are you looking to relocate? So those types of questions will help us answer too. Where are you looking? Like I think you just have to start with the basics. Are we looking in your hometown currently, or are you thinking that you're going to be relocating because you're traveling, or are you open to later relocating? He's an attorney, right? And you're an attorney turned matchmaker. I'm going to guess that if he's right, you would typically be working at a firm and you're likely to stay in that area. How does that work?
I think traditionally, but of course now with all of the remote work that people are doing, I think that, that is such a huge option. So I don't know if he has the flexibility. And of course, that would be a great thing to consider. There were so many things that you said about like considering his vision of where does he want to live? Where is he open to dating? All of those things, family, how important is it for him to have kids early or wait? So I think those would be things also for him to get that clarity would be super helpful because really, if he's gotten through law school, if he's gotten through this far, it's because he had a vision and a plan. And I think that's so important in a relationship. And we don't think about that, but we have so much control over getting intentional about all of these things, right? I mean, I do believe that there's some mystery and luck and serendipity there, but just like we don't sit at the bottom of an office building hoping someone offers a job, we get proactive. It's going to be the same thing, and with finding this relationship and nurturing it for him.
Yeah. And I think I've said this before, like I don't think readiness is a feeling, right? Readiness is a choice. You have to choose. And so if he is saying now is the time that he wants to look for a relationship, then it's time to make that a priority. I think you can say everything is important, but in those scenarios, then nothing becomes important. And you have to start with step one of identifying where that is and then going, how am I going to meet this person? Because I would guess that if he is traveling around to these other cities and maybe he's going out to places, is he going to meet somebody that is likely to align with his living situation, whether that's going to be back home or whatnot? And so step one, yeah, I think figure out what that looks like. And then what would you say step two is obviously going, okay, I don't know, a night a week, I'm going to visit a restaurant or a place where I could have the potential of meeting somebody that would align. And then step three is how am I going to approach somebody that, might be somebody that I want to talk to and pursue.
Yeah, and I think that luckily at 30 he's probably got oh, lots of avenues if he becomes intentional about doing that. I think it sounds like another part that might be more of a challenge for him is what does he do once he finds somebody that he wants to invest in, right? Then it becomes, if he's gone, like he said, all the time, he's going to have to make those choices about how much is he willing to say, I've made a decision that I need be home a little bit more. Or even if he's not quite at that stage, making a plan for it. Like, right, it doesn't have to be a marathon. I mean, a sprint, it could be more of a marathon. And just getting really intentional about, the Gottmans talk about the small gestures and the small bits for connection. So just because he's busy and out of town doesn't mean that he can't, find the time to express affection, love, interest, consistency, all of those things. So I think that really putting effort into nurturing the relationships that he does find is going to be really important, and maybe taking small steps and making a plan for, okay, how much time and effort, now that I've met someone, if I meet someone, can I gradually bring, maybe pulling back a little bit from work and giving more into a relationship.
Yeah, I would say if your Google Calendar gets more attention than your relationship, there's probably going to be an issue there. So, finding those small ways, like you just mentioned, to nurture the relationship is going to be really important. Um, I've heard of the I'm gonna butcher it, but I know there's like maybe you've talked about this, but the 7-day rule, right? Where 7 days you do something intentional for your partner, or 7 days you go out on a date, and every 7 months you plan a vacation or a trip together. So whatever that looks like, I think it doesn't have to be those hard, fast rules, but I think the point is being very like, all right, let's have some sort of intentionality about what the relationship is going to look like. I do have a busy career. I obviously have to navigate all these different things, but this relationship is important. It's a priority for me. So where can I build in pieces, time, effort that is going to demonstrate my desire for this relationship and continuing to foster this relationship.
I love that. And I think, for some people, if that is a challenge, right, you might need to set calendars for yourself or just use other tools, because it doesn't come naturally for everyone. But if it's super important to you, then it takes doing whatever you have to, right, to make that work. So I love that. And I think another question that people can ask is, when you are in a really great relationship, is like, how can I make your life a little bit better every day? And I think if both people commit to that sort of mentality in a relationship, that is going to go a really long way. Even just little things, right? Then there's all of these positive connections that you have daily, which again, they found are super important. So that would be another thing that I think would be easy to do.
Yeah, I suppose if you're time blocking on your calendar, what's to say you can't just put on your calendar, 2 hours date night or connection or something like that.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, the little things really do add up, and I think that it's more the intention. So I think if our young lawyer, just kind of just like anything else, right, puts that same energy and effort into figuring out the clarity of around what it looks like that he wants, and then puts in that effort. Where is he going to find this person? Where are they likely to be? What are the values that he wants, them to align on, and what kind of vision, the things that we ask our clients, right, all the time. If he puts that time into it, and then realizes that every step he's taking is getting him closer to that, then I think that it'll take care of that resentment and bring him a lot of joy in knowing that, this is something he is choosing for himself. And so whatever sacrifices have to be made, because anytime you say yes to something, you say no to something else. So each decision that gets him closer to that goal, that might resonate with sort of how he's gotten to where he's gotten in his legal career.
Yeah, absolutely. Where would you tell people who have careers that travel often, where do you think they should go to potentially find a match? I mean, I'm assuming our clients aren't going to the club. I mean, I know that, but where do you think they would be most likely to find somebody?
I think we know that 50% of this adult population is single. So that means there are single people everywhere. And I would say that just first of all, being open no matter where you are, whether it's at the airport lounge or, at the grocery store, and just like putting away your phone and just being open. And, if you see somebody, smile and be warm, those kinds of things, that'll go a long way. And then really just figuring out what are your genuine interests, and going in those directions, right? Because you do want to meet like-minded people. So I don't believe in like a one size fits all again, but maybe joining a sports league would be great at that age. If he is someone who's active, or any kind of young professionals organizations, Chamber of Commerce, they're always having socializing, networking events. So go in with a positive attitude, and I think he would be probably fine. anywhere where he has that intention and openness.
Yeah, that's that lifestyle piece that we find alignment in, right? So if you play pickleball or tennis, right, just being open to potentially meeting somebody at those types of places that obviously enjoy things, activities that you like, can be that opportunity. I think just the awareness and the opportunity to meet somebody is important. And then I know our guys all the time are asking just how to approach somebody in a situation. Any tips around that?
I think that is a really tough spot, right? Like Maria and I have talked about this, that sometimes men get a really hard rap because we want you to approach, right, on one hand, and on the other, there are some women who then might get offended. And so I think it's a fine line there. But I would say that as long as you are respectful and curious and, if there's something that piques your interest, kind of leading with that, I just don't think you can go wrong. What about you, Maria? Are there times that you're like, please don't approach me? Or do you think you give off certain different signals when you do want someone to approach?
I really do, actually. They're like the gym. I think that's always the go-to an analogy in this, right? Women specifically going to the gym and then being approached. I think there is a way to do it at a gym setting, but that is the one scenario. For example, if I've got my headphones on and I'm on the treadmill, doing it all out, and somebody approaches me, that's not the time, right? Like you need to have a little decorum and make some decisions around that. But if I'm standing by the drinking fountain or something and I'm, just taking a break, or maybe on my way out or way in or something, and there was a moment, then I think there is, that opportunity that somebody can approach and say hi. I like the approach of kind of seeming busy and like offering up something for a starter conversation without making it so demanding, like you have to now stop and talk to me. So I like the scenarios in, the coffee shop setting. If you see somebody that you might want to approach, just saying, hey, I was just really quickly going to order some coffee. You look like you've been here before. Anything you might recommend, right? It's a very like low effort way to start a conversation, and it shows that you're not going to sit there and stay and take up all their time, but it allows you to at least start a conversation. And you'll tell, I think, very quickly from body language and the energy that they're putting out there if they want to continue that conversation. And then great, feel free to do so and perhaps get numbers, right? But if it's obviously something that they're, not interested in, or they're on their way out, they can just quickly say, "Oh, I'd get this coffee," and they run out, and you can say, "Thank you, goodbye." So I think just those little moments that we can kind of go in and Matthew Hussey talks about this, right? Drop the handkerchief moments. Look for those.
We answered or the
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, I think so. Hopefully that'll help our jet setting lawyer, figure out what he is looking for and how to look for it.
Yeah, there's a time of life for everything, if you make time for it. So, I'm sure you see that the next several, I guess, progressions of your career, there are people who aren't traveling as much, and that's a decision they make, and then they choose to invest in their families or their relationships. And so you always have that option as well. So hopefully we helped.
Beautiful. All right, let's go to the next one.
But I'm going to start with the analogy of Chris Williamson that I like a lot on his podcast, which is dating and marrying is like putting a bouquet of flower in your house. And when you're doing this very early in your life, you're going to kind of build your house around the bouquet. I mean, when you grow a bit older without getting married first, you build your house and then you want to find the bouquet of flower that is really going to fit within your house. And this really hit me when I heard that, because I was like, I think my expectations and desires have grown very, very precise, maybe too precise and too demanding. And like, I want to find the perfect bouquet of flower for the life I've built, or that I'm still building actually. And it is very, very hard. So the funny thing is, I was with a girl before starting that company and really going all in. I thought she was the one. And then we went through some issues, problems. I needed to leave the country to be able to go all in my entrepreneurial journey. I mean, at least I wanted to leave the country. I could have done without, of course, but It made sense to me at that time. And I was like, is it going to be even reasonable to keep going out with this girl? And so I broke up, and then I came back, and we kind of had this situationship. At some point, we just had a very tough conversation, which is, okay, do we want to do this? What will it take? And I think I realized that the life she wanted wasn't going to be in line with the life that I wanted. I mean, it would have still be possible to coexist for sure, but like, I don't feel that my professional goals and my ambition would be compatible with the lifestyle that she wanted. So we had to end it. And now I'm basically very, very careful about that. But it's hard. It's hard to find a lady, I feel, that will match that ambition and that lifestyle. Something that I have is I'm going to travel a lot. I'm not fixed. And I mean, a large percentage of the population is employed, right? Is a full-time employee, which means not lots of flexibility in terms of mobility, at least for most of the people, except for potential entrepreneurs. But again, the proportion of men entrepreneur versus women entrepreneur is largely in favor of men, which means women who could understand that lifestyle and actually embrace it because they are doing it for themselves is very, very tough to find because they are just so little. Finding that one girl who's going to be driven, motivated to build her company, and yet emotionally available to build a company together with somebody else, build a life story with somebody else, or potentially build a company with that same person, is, I feel, so hard to find. Should I find someone who ticks a certain amount of boxes and build with that person, which is kind of what I'm leaning towards? I'm talking to this girl, and she's super successful, New York lawyer, like really professional, ambitious career, but her objective is to be a stay-at-home mom. And in my head, I'm like, okay, so she wants a provider, which I'm not against fundamentally, but is that gonna be compatible with my lifestyle? Maybe, honestly, that's one option. Or should we just go down the road of just find somebody normal who's gonna potentially be flexible in regards to your lifestyle, but is gonna have a life on their own? I'd say that's the difficulty. I think the analogy of the bouquet of flowers is really good. So yeah, my question would be, how would you go about that, knowing that I'm far from having reached my objective as well? Like, my goal is to be much more successful than that, and so put much more work into all this, and so not be available in terms of time, but also potentially in terms of emotional availability from time to time. I like the idea of seasons, though, to be fair, it's been a 2-year season of working hard. So, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. So the whole question is, what's the right balance? What type of woman should I be looking for? And what's the right way to find her? And defining what I want is super important. And the thing is, how do you define what you want? Because it could work in many different situations and many different scenarios. So yeah, I think that's really the difficulty that I'm facing right now. I'm finding someone defining what I want, and then how to find that person and how to build while still being working a lot.
That was a lot there.
Hopefully, I feel like he was walking in traffic or something while he was recording that. I was like, oh my goodness, I hope he's safe. It felt like he was really looking for like a co-founder or a business partner more than a love interest at first, is kind of what I felt like he was saying. And then I think the ping pong ball happened of, well, maybe I do want this, or maybe I don't want this, right? I think that we hear that all the time. I get on the calls with individuals, and they start telling me what they want. And of course, this unicorn person is developed. You've said it before. It's not build a bear out there, right? Build a person. But what are the non-negotiables when deciding, what you do and do not want in a partner? And I heard him say, like, how do you even identify that?
Yeah, definitely. And I know that something we talk about, and we talk about a lot with our clients, are, like you said, we can't build a human, right? And so we need to get super, super clear on what our needs are, and our must-haves versus our wants, or like would be really nice to haves, because that is the difference in all of it. You're going to have compromise in a relationship. There's just almost no way that you're going to find the perfect human who meets everyone and every need. But if you meet somebody and they don't meet your needs, eventually that is going to breed resentment and just lead to, I think, unsuccessful marriages and unsuccessful relationships. And so it's really hard for us listening to, like, without asking more questions, know what your needs are, right? I love that bouquet analogy, but of course, what that bouquet looks like is so subjective. Everybody's idea of what a beautiful bouquet is. And so, again, getting a lot more clarity, and whether that's through experience. I mean, maybe you've had experience in the past that has taught you, like, what didn't work for you, what you really loved. How do you like to feel in life, in a relationship? Those are only questions that you can answer. But I would say that it's worth delving deeper into the vision that you have for your life. And, I don't know, even just like thinking, like, if you could only pick one thing, like, to get lucky and in life, what would that one thing be? Just to get really clear on what is super important, what is really the thing that if you had really, really well would bring you the most fulfillment. I always believe that's relationships, because that's the way I'm wired. That's the business we're in. That is, that's just my philosophy. And, like, I recognize that we're all wired for connection. Some people's version of happiness can look very different from mine. And it might be, if I had this incredibly successful career, and other things fell by the side, that would be okay. Research shows that usually if you have that amazing relationship as your base, you can go further. Maybe not faster, because you will have to invest, but you can certainly go further with the support of another human. But certainly that would be something worth really getting clear on, is what is your need and what is your priority. And that can change. That might be where you are today, and that could look very different. So just know that whatever decision you make today is going to impact your tomorrow, but it's always subject to change, and you're going to learn a little bit from every experience.
Yeah, I do think compatibility does depend on your lifestyle rhythm. And when we talk about this with clients, we're matching on their vision, values, and lifestyle, so that vision for their lifestyle and their vision for their relationship. But and I'm not entirely sure this is exactly what he was saying in this, but it just brings this point up because I hear it all the time, and I'm curious as to your feedback in this, because I sometimes think people have some unrealistic expectations. Can kind of go to, like, the simplest expectation of, we hear people, right, say something like, I'm looking for a guy who's over 6 foot, right? The blue eye finance guy. And everybody has seen the research on that's like, I don't know, 0.5% of the population or whatever. It's a very low likelihood of meeting that person. On the flip side, the guy version that I sometimes hear, which is a little bit what I think he was saying, is that, he's looking for this person who is very invested in their career, wants to build something, possibly together, but for sure is in the process of building something herself within her career to be successful. But he has what seems to be kind of more of a remote opportunity and or travels a lot and wants somebody who can kind of do that with him. Most people who are building their careers and are busy and are successful don't have the luxury of just picking up and jet setting, across the world or to another state or something, just because we are in an area now that more remote opportunities are available. So maybe that percentage is increasing and the opportunity to find somebody like that is increasing. But sometimes I wonder when I hear, these guys who are like, I want a woman who can take care of herself and is successful and busy, but I want her to be able to, go to Cabo or Cancun or, St. Bart's with me at a moment's notice. And I'm always like, well, those things don't always match up. Which one is it? Which is the priority?
Totally. And right, it's men and women. We hear this from, again, it's like, I want this and I want this and I want that and I want that. And, even as matchmakers, when we do these highly tailored churches, we still can't find, in most cases, everything. So I agree with you. I think most people can be a little bit rigid, right, in what their criteria is. And that's up to you. But the more that someone restricts those parameters, the smaller the pool. And so when you're filtering out things like that, you're decreasing the odds that you're going to find someone who has some of these incredible human qualities that might make for a much better person than their ability to pick up and go to Cabo with you, right? They might be super smart and nurturing and fun and positive and, all of these amazing qualities, but because they have a job in a city where they can't go up, and that's up to you. And if it doesn't match your lifestyle, then certainly it doesn't match your lifestyle. But just know that when you make demands like that, you're significantly cutting down your options. So just make sure you're whittling away at the right things would be my advice. But yeah, I hear the same thing. It's kind of like, I want a unicorn.
Yeah. Well, I think, partnership isn't about matching resumes. It is about matching vision, and specifically in partnership, finding the other to your need. And first it's identifying what that need is. And then I think it goes into the give and take, right? In love and in business, balance comes from, giving, without losing yourself, of course, in that process. But where are you able to give, and what is it that is the part that you need to get from somebody else?
Definitely. And also value. I think that sometimes people can think that because they're super successful, then, that should be, and it's a source of pride. Your partner should be proud of you, but it doesn't necessarily increase your value in terms of being a good partner. So I would also say that remember that just because, you're a successful professional doesn't mean that on the other side you can't be a successful or great partner, because that's the thing that's going to be sustaining the relationship. So putting all the effort again into growing a career and just thinking like, oh, that this woman will kind of be there to support me, and then not realizing that you have to give back and nurture that relationship, that's going to be a problem. So you're always, if, I guess if you're in a place where like your career is everything, it might not be the time, right? Situationships just might be where your bouquet is today. It's maybe a temporary bouquet. But I think that when you're ready to have that bouquet, you need to know what it is that you're looking for. And then you also need to be able to take really good care of it, because the house will crumble around it if you don't.
Yep, I certainly agree.
Let's see, I was trying to think if we didn't answer any of his other things. We talked about where is he likely to find this unicorn? That's the part that he also was asking for help with. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get from his situation that, the traveling around is something that's continuing and going to continue for him. So, obviously if he could find somebody that's that has a remote opportunity, might be a better fit for him. And um I think there are certainly avenues and places to find those types of individuals, but that's also, to put a feather in our cap, where matchmaking can be such an asset for busy individuals that are traveling and, are looking for something. That's where we can come into play and probably help do that without him going out and wasting time, or wasting somebody else's time too, that isn't in alignment with what he's looking for.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then I was just thinking about that program. I forgot what it's called, but people who, I think it's like Remote Year or something, and it's young professionals who travel the world together essentially. So I think that might be ambitious, but I think if anyone, the way we would recruit, right? We would be looking at who follows Remote Year and then looking at those people. That might be a little too intentional, too much work, but certainly looking into communities where people are, but there are probably other like Facebook groups and things like that for remote workers, airport lounges. I'm sure that you must have status at some lounge. So that would be a really great spot, I would think, to meet somebody else. And
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do you remember the cruise line that went out? It was like, I think it was a year-long commitment that you had to make, but it was a cruise line for people in virtual positions, and it went, I think, literally all the way around the world, and you would be on this cruise line with all other individuals who are working virtually, and then being able to stop around the world. I'm not typically a fan of cruise ships, but I mean, that could be a really cool situation or setup for somebody in his position who is just like trying to see the world, trying to travel, do all of that at the same time, building a career. Um, and then there'd be, lots of other like-minded individuals on that. And possibly then every place you stop, meeting other people like-minded. There's certain hotel chains like Selena, for example, that's geared towards, I think digital nomads these days becomes kind of the word we're trying to avoid, but geared towards people with remote positions and and has events around um, you know, that people can attend and meet other like-minded individuals. So I think you just, again, putting yourself in the positions to meet people that are likely going to align with the vision that you have for your lifestyle.
Yeah. Co-working spaces. Um, if you're into fitness, and like, I guess if you have guest passes at different gyms in the city, and you can always ask for advice about, wherever you're staying, I think that's a great conversation starter. So I think that in person, probably those opportunities are presenting themselves if you take advantage of them. You've always, of course, got the option of dating apps, great tool, terrible process. But I think we've given you a lot to start with.
All right, let's go to the last caller, I think.
So my scenario is an engineer working at a very successful company. I travel a lot for my job, and I'm on track to receive some very senior positions within the next 5 years. Obviously, conditional on certain projects going very, very well. I'm very ambitious on that. It's been a life goal of mine to become president in my company, and I'm certainly on track to do that. And a large part of climbing the corporate ladder is the networking, the socializing, and it's not just doing a good job. It's also your seniors and everyone around you being happy with you and kind of feeling like they're welcoming you and they'll sponsor you as you move up the ranks. And those are usually, in couple settings, right? There are dinners at home with the wife and whatnot. So I'm currently dating my girlfriend from college. She's great. She's certainly, we have lots of fun. We're obviously very in love. That's where all this came from. But she's not really interested in the whole socializing aspect, or I don't know if she's not interested or she's just not good at it. But it's usually a big problem that we have. It's a bit contentious where I don't feel supported in that, and at times I don't even feel super proud to take her to these kind of things, and largely because she just doesn't socialize the way I guess you're meant to in these scenarios. I don't know if it's really helping my career attending these dinners with my bosses and other senior people at my company, when the woman on my shoulder isn't furthering my case. And I look at these other wives. We're not married yet. We're not engaged. But I look at these other wives and I see how they're helping their husband's case in a lot of scenarios. They're socializing with the other wives. They're able to socialize with the other husbands as well, and in a way that makes husbands look good. And I just wish that the girl I'm dating would be able to do that as well. And it kind of leaves me at a bit of an impasse around. Tried having that conversation with her, but largely I don't know how to have it, I guess, in a delicate way, without, I guess, her getting defensive or me feeling like I'm overly criticizing her. I just don't feel like I know how to have that conversation without just basically saying, hey, like, I'm not proud to show you off, or you're not helping me, or I wish you would help me more, or, in that regard. And it's almost making me think, with my ambitious goals, is this the right person to have with me as a life partner? And that's probably why, we've been dating for 6 years now, and I haven't proposed or anything like that, although we've talked about it. And it's largely because I'm not sure she's the one. Like, I'm on this upward trajectory, and she seems kind of content with the life that we kind of had as, freshly out of college. Whereas I'm not. I really want more. And I know she in theory wants more. Obviously, we want more money, and we want the status and success. But I don't feel like she's helping me achieve that. And I'm starting to really have doubts about if she's the right person for me and my career. And career isn't everything in life. I understand that. But it's certainly, I guess, the period of my life that I'm right now, it's certainly a priority right now. And so I'm trying to understand and navigate that. Like, how do I have that conversation with her? Or if it's not about having the conversation with her, it's about finding someone that matches my aspirations and is able to be a partner in that, as opposed to that what right now feels like a hindrance.
Oof, some strong language. I mean, at the end of the day, your career isn't going to hug you at night, but okay, where do we begin here? So I guess, how do you help clients to know if they are in a slump or like truly outgrown a relationship is kind of what I guess the question essentially is. They met in college, right? So this is some younger love that as their careers and lifestyles have changed and developed, it sounds like what they're looking for may have also changed and developed. And I did hear, I think I heard him say that he has tried to have the conversation around it. Is that what you heard?
I did, very vaguely, and we don't, of course, know what that looks like, how far he got when he tried.
Yeah.
I would think that it would be the start of that would just be curiosity, because I also heard him say that he wasn't sure if it was because she doesn't support him, which is how he feels, or whether she can't, or she's just not very good at it. So it seems like there's so many unanswered questions about where it's coming from that could be leading to miscommunication and hurt feelings. And then also I would be curious whether he has expressed to her why this is important to him, what this means to him, and how he feels. So those would be also my questions, and how to have the conversation is just to start with curiosity. And so there's no misunderstandings, no assumptions being made of where is she coming from? Is this a matter of her ability? Is it a matter of her desire? Is it a matter of her ability to grow and align with his life vision? Does not feel that supporting him is important. You know, all of those would be really important conversational pieces to put together, but in a way of just asking the questions and then listening without judgment and letting her speak. And then knowing that he'll have a turn to sort of express his perspective, where he's coming from. I think that would be a good starting point. But I also think what you were saying about, there could be differences now that people do grow apart and things change, and, it could be a misalignment or a temporary disconnect.
Obviously, we're not relationship coaches, but on the front end, when we are matching people up, that intentionality around the values, I think is really important. We dig in on your top 5 core values and making sure that they are in alignment with the person that you are being matched up with, because I think at the end of the day, you are going to go through seasons and you are going to go through change, right? That's normal. You're going to go through hardship. That's normal. But if you know where your values are, you always have that to fall back on. So if for him, maintaining a family and having a family, is something that's very important for him and her, then probably digging into that conversation maybe deeper and really getting an answer is probably important for him, and deciding if something is superseding a value, and that they need to maybe possibly bring that back to top of mind, top of heart, for the decision, and letting that be the driver. So I would like to assume and hope that early on he met somebody that does align with his core values, and that she has the same ones, and that can prevail, and get through this particular season if they can kind of fall back onto those pieces. I mean, the specific issue he discussed, right, which sounds like, I think sometimes we can always, you just mentioned about the watering the grass, and on the other side, the grass analogy of, is the grass greener on the other side? Looking for somebody, it sounds like he's looking for somebody to go to events, go to networking opportunities, and stand with him and be engaged in that, right? And so that in itself, just on surface level, doesn't seem like too difficult of an ask. but perhaps there's layers to that where, she feels uncomfortable. She doesn't know what to say. The settings are outside of the world that she knows. And then maybe it's about supporting her to get comfortable in those conversations or in those settings. And so then the work becomes on that versus the problem at hand.
Exactly. I mean, I think who knows whether it's social anxiety or what may be behind it. And so I think that is where it's important to ask those questions. Um, and then also, how important is that for him? If that is something that hopefully they can get her there, or she's willing. I mean, the big thing is, does she have a growth mindset? If it's something that is important to her partner and she has a growth mindset and is willing to sort of get better at it and do what's important, wonderful. It will probably be just fine. If that's missing, that's going to be a problem in general. And also I would say, is that the only thing missing? I wonder if he's been having these doubts for 5 years. Is it just that? Or if he's honest with himself, are there other things about her personality? I'm just saying, if she is someone who's just unwilling, right, that's probably spilling over into other things, I'm guessing. So that would be another important ask for him.
Hard to believe that somebody who's been in a relationship that long, that the reason you're considering ending the relationship is because of her not wanting to network, right? I would agree with you that there has to be more to it than that, leading up to it. I had a therapist I worked with once who did kind of 2 different exercises with me, and I think could be useful. But each person writes down. I guess it's like a future vision test first, right? Each person would write down what they want 5 years from now, and then compare, and see where there's, parallel and clarity. And then you spend the next 90 days intentionally re-engaging, new communication, new experiences, check-ins, honest conversations, like really intentional 90 days. And then if you don't see shifting or improvements, then that's clarity, and that tells you something. And I think that gives you a pretty solid foundation to really go, where are some of those other issues that may be the real root causes here, and are they something that we can work on? Because we're talking about your life partner, and that means longevity and everything that goes along with it. So am I going to be able to continue building through that with this person, or are we at just different values, different alignments, and what we're looking for?
Yeah, it takes two. And so I think that's the other part of the exercise that you were talking about, is just seeing if somebody understanding what's important is willing to make that a priority and to try to, even if it's little steps and little improvements and compromise, right? Seeing if that is on the table. And if you're seeing some movement into that direction, I think that's great. You can't expect miracles overnight. However, if you're seeing someone who knows your needs, hears what you're saying, and just is inconsiderate of your wishes, then that is probably going to spill over somewhere else. Again, this is just making sure. I mean, it could be major social anxiety, in which case it's a very different equation, but still would be, if that's the case, if you see that this is all you're going to get, you're going to have to be really honest with yourself about how important is it, and how wonderful is everything on the other side, because maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but in my estimation, unless it's family, I think our relationships are optional. I don't think they're unconditional. I think that you should stay and keep in a relationship that enhances your life overall. Nothing is perfect, so much compromise, things like that. But in general, if you have a partner who's bringing your life down when you only have one life, I don't believe in that. So I think for everyone that's going to look a little different, but probably a good conversation to have with yourself.
So I guess that's fair. You can outgrow someone without outloving them too, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you just, don't care about them anymore, but you are right. Life is short. And so going through it with somebody that you do match with, you do adore, that is supporting you, is very important, right? We talk about it all the time. Your life partner is probably the most important decision you make. It impacts everything, business included, but most importantly, your happiness. So that is definitely worth something. I err on the side of I don't like to just give up on things easily, but and I think that being intentional, that's going to be the word of the day around making that choice, right? If it isn't the right choice, making it because you went through the motions of deciding it versus just burying your head in the sand. At least that's what I guess I would encourage this person to do. And so that no matter what, he can feel like on the other side of it, I did the work to see if this was the right fit. And if it wasn't, clarity is also kindness, and being able to let her find somebody that aligns with what she's looking for.
Totally agree. And by the way, just to clarify, I very much do believe in commitment, and I don't just think that people should be cut because you're having a bad month and they're not being, wonderful. Just to be clear, I very much believe in commitment and mistakes and growth and change and all of those things. What I'm saying is if unhealthy relationships that poison your one and only life, to me, are not ones that, I encourage. So that's just to be clear. But for our caller, I would say that, just make a list of all of the things that are really, really important that you love about her. And that, and the things that you want to see in a future partner and a future life. And so if she fits into most of that and the really important stuff, well, then maybe this is something you can work through together. But if not, then at least you've had the conversation and know that you've kind of come to that intentionally, like Maria said, instead of just burying your head and letting the resentment build and the disaster loom.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think you can be intentional with your work life and then impulsive or careless with your love life and relationships and hope that that's going to be successful. So, connection is built. Usually it's not just randomly found. So he has something that it might be worth continuing to look into or to dig into and then deciding from there. And certainly you're the one who has taught me about, looking for the right mix that is important, those values that would make some relationship, stand the test of time. Really quickly before we end the call, I think too, this might be something that I could be an important factor in this situation that we bring up during our clients. Maybe you could talk about is just generally love languages and deciding if there's alignment here and if maybe one person isn't receiving the love language that they need to feel the support and the growth that they need. Could you maybe kind of talk about love languages really quick before we?
Sure. I mean, I know that the book simplifies it right into the 5 love languages: acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touch, gift giving.
You said affirmations.
Quality time. That's the 5th one, right? We said them all. Anyway, of course, that those are pretty general, and it is important to know what are some of the ways that your partner really feels your love, your affection, and then delivering in those ways, not in just the ways that you like to receive yourself. So being really curious and getting clear on that, I think, is really important. And then also within that, of course, are nuances, right? And giving instructions for yourself. And maybe she doesn't understand how important it is for you and how her attending events with you and, trying to be charming, how that makes you feel supported and how that is one way that you want to feel in a relationship, which I think is a really normal way to want to feel. But maybe if she understood that it's less about, oh, I just want you to get dressed up and, go be fake with me, and more about, I want you to come and support me. It makes me feel loved. It makes me feel like we're on the same page and we're building something together. That could really make a difference. So just being really, clear about expressing your needs and what it means to you and where that comes from, I think will go a long way, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have kind of the primary love language that is important for us. And then from there, all of the other ones are important and probably something that we need to see. But in this scenario, it just made me think of acts of service, right? He's literally looking for her to help him, support him, stand with him, network with him, right? That is acts of service. So I don't know if that is his top love language, but sounds like what he is asking for to be received in this moment. And that's a conversation. I think if you have it around something like that, where it is a conversation about love and support, it could be received differently. And maybe that is a softer way for her to hear it, to be able to go, I can do that. I want to do that for you. Right. And so that she is giving in the way that he needs to receive love.
Yeah, I think that's great. And if she's unwilling, well, then there's probably an answer there, right? And a choice to make.
Well, good. I think we had some good calls today. It's always special to hear from individuals that are going through it, right? The same things that our clients are experiencing every single day. We have people that are been in marriages for a long time and just getting back into the dating scene and trying to figure it out. And so I think this was a really good start to being able to answer some of those questions. And I look forward to hearing some more of the questions that we get in the future.
Likewise, keep them coming.